We're live. We are live. Let me see. Hey, Claire's here.
Hey, Claire.
Hi, Claire.
Oh, and Shona.
Woo.
We've almost got the whole team. I think it's like 5. It's probably like 4 or 5 a.m. like 3 days from now, where Nicola is. That time change always gets me. All right, so it is 1 o'clock. I will stall and ramble and say weird things until probably about 1:03, just to give people time to still trickle in. Those who are watching this on the playback can probably fast forward just a little bit if you don't want to hear my random music. But today, pretty much what we're going to cover is a subject that I am very passionate about making untaboo, if you will. It's something that it's natural, normal, and I think that a lot of women are kind of made to feel like they have to, be secretive about it, and it's something everyone knows is going on. So, again, I'm very passionate about making this something that's not taboo any longer. As Madeline and I were talking earlier, and I was saying to Lucy, I think neither man nor woman should be afraid to go into the feminine aisle, if you will.
Feminine.
Yeah, I'll dance through it. I don't care. It's not a big. What's funny is actually, and to keep with my random musings, I swear to you, the Kroger by me puts the feminine products and the baby stuff in the same aisle. And I tend to be the only man on that aisle, which is always interesting. But, again, I think that says a lot, though, about, kind of how it's viewed and things of that nature. It's again, it's a silly thing that, everybody should be able to talk about. It's normal. I see guys doing far worse and far more gross things on a regular basis, and I'll save you from talking about those here. But again, this webinar is more about kind of, what do we do when it's that time of the month, when the cycle has wrapped back around? What do we do in the middle of the cycle? How do we react? And one of the things to keep in mind here is that not every cycle is going to be the same. We will use the 28-day method. Sorry, Madeline, I'm kind of stealing from your beginning speech here, but we're going to use the 28-day.
Typical man.
Yeah, I know. Just taking more than I should. We'll use the 28-day, and this is not saying that every woman has to be on a 28-day cycle. This is just kind of used for the sake of teaching it, as well as it's kind of the norm, if you will, but it doesn't mean that every woman falls into this. There is also the consideration around irregular cycles, which I'll touch on a bit, but we're going to start off with Madeline, and she's going to explain. We break it down into 3 phases. Some people will break it down into as many. I think I've even seen 6 different phases. You can break down, heck, we can break it down day by day, and I can give you 28 phases. But we're going to keep it at 3 to keep it simple. I'm going to let Madeline kind of go over what each one is and some of her experiences with training around each, as well as Lucy will hop in on that. Then I will cover considerations with each one, as well as a little bit on menopause, perimenopause, and irregular cycles. And then Lucy has some questions for me, some Q&A, and then we'll also open it up to the audience as well. So I will now hand it over to Madeline.
Okay. Good morning, or well, I guess evening. And it's not even morning here either, so never mind. Anyway.
It's morning somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere. Maybe
Where's Nicola?
Yeah, with Nicola. It's morning for Nicola.
Morning, Nicola!
But yeah, whenever y'all want to jump in or ask questions or Lucy give your kind of opinion or experience, that would be great. So, okay, so I'll start off kind of following with what Jonathan said about, we're going to talk about it as a 28-day cycle, but obviously, some people are 32, some people are 24, you never know. So, but this is just the scientific 28-day, how it's supposed to be by the book cycle. So your first day of menses is going to start with your follicular phase. It's the start of your menstrual phase. It ends the day your ovulation starts, and this is where your estrogen and your progesterone, your two main hormones in this deal, are at their lowest. The ovulation starts right after that. That's where your egg is released, and that's when you can sometimes get lower abdominal cramping. I've talked with Jonathan about training. Yeah, I get a little bit.
I'm there.
Yeah, I can definitely tell personally, but around that time, you just want to kind of lay off maybe some ab exercises for a day or two, just kind of take that a little bit easier. But typically for me, it doesn't super, harm my training schedule or anything like that, but that's just me personally. Then begins the luteal phase, which is attributed to your increase in appetite, mood swings, cravings, lack of motivation, and all these things happen.
That sounds like me 24/7.
Yeah, lack of motivation. No. But, the mood swings can really be controlled with vitamin D, which people just don't get enough of anymore. We're not hunters and gatherers. We're not outside all the time anymore. So you can supplement that with just a pill or, go outside more. Your cravings are definitely attributed to your hormones, with those hormones just increasing and decreasing. And that'll help that'll affect your blood sugar as well. So, if your blood sugar is low and you're falling out, like keep an apple or a banana by your side, just something that will keep you on track for your goals. But it's just important to note all of these things throughout the month, just so you know, like, okay, on the 4th day, I'm going to be super hungry, more than normal. And so I'm going to pack an extra apple and some peanut butter or something like that. Just keep your goals in mind whenever you're going through this stuff, because you don't want to be thrown off completely and, lose a day of cardio or something just because of being extra hungry. Also, I think the stereotypical period time is chocolate, our cravings, and magnesium really helps with that. So if you can take a magnesium pill or eat some spinach that's high in magnesium, those will be good to kind of kick those chocolate cravings. Or even, as Jonathan said in his Girls Gone Strong article, you can have a little bit of dark chocolate or something just to fend off those crazy cravings. But that decrease in blood sugar and that increased hunger can also happen because your body will, your core temperature rises, so you're going to be burning more calories about 5 to 8 days before your
meal. There's a reason I need to eat more.
Yeah, you don't need any more reason.
Yeah. Can I just interject a question that I think a few women will have. I don't know if I speak just for myself, but when you've had children, and you've not had periods for a while, and then a lot of us go on to have the coil fitted, then have it taken out. Quite a lot of women don't even know where they're at with anything. I couldn't tell you anything. I couldn't even tell you my time of the month. Husband can. I couldn't. Do you have a particular app that you recommend for tracking, just to get an idea? Because I honestly, I couldn't, the only thing I could tell you about my cycle is when I'm ovulating, because I know I get the stomach cramps. That's it. I don't get any pains at time of the month, just then. But do you recommend any particular apps to sort of track, or, a way to keep a diary to actually see, because these points that you're saying throughout the cycle, I think a lot of women don't have a very good connection with themselves, where they're at with that. So do you reckon keeping a diary is a good idea? Or
I think, honestly, personally, I actually have a day planner, and I'll put just like a little, asterisk or something. Yeah, just on my first day, so I know. Or like when I was really training.
Madeline's very organized.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet she has like a little key on the side with different symbols.
All right.
Sad face, happy face.
Shut up. But that's personally what I use. I know that they do make a really great app. I think one of them is called like My Time or something like that.
Yeah, My Time actually helps. If I'm not mistaken, my wife uses it, and it's the one that you can actually track. People use it to track ovulation as well, so that you can keep up with. If you're trying to get pregnant, women will use it. But it's if it's the one I'm thinking of, and I'm almost positive it is. Unfortunately, she's not here right now. So yeah, it's an awesome app though, because I looked through it, and it has all sorts of little doodads and color coding. So I'm sure Madeline would love it. But there's all sorts of stuff that it can keep up with. But if you don't have that, I actually uploaded something, Lucy, that we can get out of Lift.
I thought you was about to say I actually use, and I thought he was going to go on to tell us what you use. Jonathan.
I still think I have a time of the month. I don't know what happened. I think I do. It's obviously it's not associated with some of the other effects that may be experienced by women, but I think men go through something too.
Just get the feel.
At this point, though.
Any excuse to feel included.
Hey, I want to be a part of this. Actually, no,
Share
I don't.
our
No,
pain.
I take that back.
But I do think like that's the first step, because
Yes.
even in myself, as you guys are talking, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I don't even know. I mean, because we have this whole theme of feeling down or feeling moody, feeling more hungry. I couldn't tell you when that was at the time of the month. I just know I feel it. But I suppose that for a lot of women, the first step would actually be to keep the diary and to actually see over a period of about 3 to 4 months to see where this cycle of behaviour also comes in, because I'm sure not all women are the same as well. And they might be more hungry at different stages. So yeah, I think that's definitely the first step, is to keep a diary and actually get to know your periods.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree. And that's kind
Yeah.
of what I did when I was training with Mummert. And when he was first starting out trying to figure all this craziness out, he had me track it, and it definitely helped. And it was crazy to me because as a woman, you're like, I know everything there is to know.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
he's like filling me in. I'm like, look at that beard. How do you know more about this than I do?
Yeah, and I think as well, don't you think a lot of it comes down to, women don't really like to be told, particularly when they're moody. We know when we're moody. We don't need to be told. So again, keeping the diary, it's more of self-reflection, because there's no way in hell my husband can tell me that I'm particularly moody at a particular time, because I'm like, oh,
You're
don't
going
say
to be moody.
Yeah. What do you mean I'm moody?
I thought I was helping her.
Yeah. So I think by keeping the diary, obviously it ends up being a bit of self-reflection, and if you're working with a coach, then you're kind of looking at that together, rather than feeling like someone's on you about it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just me?
The first part, that I was going to say when actually going into this, Lucy, and it's great that you brought that up, is, and like Madeline said, one of the first things I tell, a woman when I'm working with her is, I want you to start recording, your cycle. I want you to record it daily. I want you to write down how you feel. I want you to write down, if you had any hunger cravings, and what they were, if so. And you can quickly make a note. Day one, I started today. I felt absolutely, just down. My mood.
We have so much to say, though, Jonathan. Do you understand that? As women, we've got so much to say.
Hey, again, it can be a, you're finding yourself in these moments. Get to know your period. But, you really do need to, especially in the beginning, I would advise, if you really want to make a change and you want to start tracking and you really feel like, hey, my cycle plays a role in how I feel throughout the month, the more you write down, the better. You can make quick notes or you can make long ones. I found that, just diarying, using a diary in and of itself can be great.
Yeah.
And so, part of this is a psychological thing. The other part of it is absolutely make notes with your food choices. If you notice that, hey, I'm getting into arguments more, and I keep looking back, and me and my boss or my husband or my coworkers seem to fight more, at this time, and it's one of those things where absolutely, any.
But do you think it's because I don't know how it is over there in the US? I don't know why it would be any different, but do you think I think there's like an element of shame as well? I don't think women want to accept or want to acknowledge that their cycle plays any part in the way they are. I mean, I do it myself. I will say, I don't really think I'm one of those people. That I'm not one of those.
I get that every time. Every time I work with a female, it's funny now because every time I'll tell them, I'm like, look, I understand that you know what goes on. You've lived with yourself way longer than I have, but try to track it for me. Just keep, and like Madeline said, I always get the response of either A, my cycle plays no part, I promise you, and they guarantee me. They just tell me, and they act like, especially being a guy, it's already hard enough because it's like, what the hell do you know about this subject? Like Madeline said, this dude with this massive beard. What does he know about the menstrual cycle? But I tell women, track it, because it's like Dalton calls them, Dalton Oliver, a good friend of mine, he calls them limiting factors, and we all have limiting factors in our life. Yeah. And parts of the cycle can can lead to a limiting factor in your training, but it can also, the better you understand it, it can lead to an extending factor, a factor that can make you better in certain areas. Women are actually, from most of the research I've seen, I mean, they recover faster. They can take on things like circuit sets, and they tend to do a little bit better with them. So there's absolutely a benefit to part of what goes on in being a female, and I think what it leads to is the psychology of, you know, women have for so long been, you know, made to be viewed as this weaker sex, if you will, and it leads into that because now we're empowering women and we're telling women, you know, you are powerful, you're beautiful, you're smart, you're intelligent, you've got, you know, you're just as strong as a man, and in many ways, if not stronger. And then you come back to something like, oh, well, because you're a woman, you have a cycle, you have a menses, and therefore this is a limiting factor in your week. And that's not the case. But I do think you're right. That's where a little bit of, you know, you don't want to admit that there's possibly something that's still holding you back, if you will.
Yeah. I think it comes down to, it's like that outside force of, you know, not having any control over the situation. I mean, you know, for most of us, you're either, you know, you're having a cycle, you can't do anything about it. And I think for women, you know, we're control freaks and we hate the thought of something else controlling our emotions and, you know, what we put in our mouths and stuff. But yeah, so I definitely think the first step for a lot of women, because, you know, I talk to a lot of women that complain about, you know, menstrual pain and moods and cravings and stuff, but I'm sure a lot of them, like myself, couldn't actually answer many questions about their cycle. I actually couldn't tell you a thing about mine right now. I couldn't even tell you. I couldn't tell you where I am at this month at all. So I think that's definitely the first step.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And if you're going to, you know, the thing is, regardless of if you want it to be there or not, or how you feel about it, the cycle is there. And since there is there's a scientific, you know, there's a cycle that most women will follow where we know that estrogen is highest in the follicular phase and it drops during the luteal phase. We know that hormones play a huge part in the way we think and in the way we act, men and women. There's actually even, when I wrote the article for Girls Gone Strong, there are women who've been acquitted of crimes, including murder, because of things like, you know, PMS.
I just want to tell my husband that. Hang on a second. I've got a get out clause now.
Yeah, and again, we know that there are, you know, massive associations between how we feel and what our hormones are doing. With that being said, you know, if you're a female and you know that your cycle tends to be a certain way, you know it's trackable, you know that you know, your periods, your menses usually begin at the same time each month, then you can start understanding, and I think you take better control. You actually give yourself more control if you know that these things are coming, because now if you know, Lucy, that on days 22 through 28, you are usually experiencing, you know, bouts of depression-like symptoms. You know that you have a little bit harder time controlling your cravings as well as your temper. You know, if you know these are experiences of yourself and you know what days they're on, then what usually happens is, because I'll be honest with you, my wife has told me a bunch of times, you know, I just feel like I'm going crazy, and then that usually ends up making it worse, because now you feel like I'm going crazy, I'm upset for no reason, I don't know why, and then all of a sudden it starts to accumulate on top of itself, and now you're a big ball of mess because you don't even know why you're that way. Whereas if you track, you now understand, hey, I know why I'm doing this. Let me take a second and you know, let me take a step back, understand that I'm feeling this way based on hormones. You know, now I'm not saying if you're in a fight with your husband, and dear God, if any men are listening to this, please do not bring this up. Unless you want to be one of the statistics who dies and she gets away with it because you said something stupid. But yeah, I mean, you know, you step back and realize, I don't know if this is really the situation that's making me mad or the fact that I'm experiencing this part of my cycle. The same with your training. You know, if you feel like, why all of a sudden am I losing motivation? Why is my training kind of taking a hit? Well, if you look back at it and you know that, oh, okay, I'm almost into, you know, I should start any day now. And you realize that around that time, again, in that luteal phase, you start losing motivation. And I'll let Madeline hop in here. You know, Madeline talked about a little bit of the motivation that she's lost around the end, and especially at the beginning, and how steady state cardio can help with that. If you wanted to add anything there, Madeline.
Yeah, I mean, definitely for me, it's like the hardest part during that time for me is really getting to the gym, because, you know, it's so much easier just to lay on the couch and mope and be tired and watch Netflix, you know, watch marathons. Yeah. But so, you know, it's really the getting to the gym. And honestly, most of the time, once I get there, and if usually those days I like to do steady state cardio because I feel like it gets my blood flowing and it kind of distracts almost from that like target zone in my lower abdomen. It like gets the blood pumping throughout the rest of my body. I'm not cramping as bad because I get really bad cramps, like to the point of like nausea. Like it gets really bad for me. So when I go to the gym, it really helps me out to just get the blood pumping, get that get the focus away from my lower abdomen. Lifting weights does that for me too. If I decide to do upper body that day or something, it just kind of distracts me, probably more mentally than physically, but it definitely does help. But yeah, like Mama said, motivation to just get there, that's the hard part most of the time. So
yeah, you know what? That's what I love about Lose Weight Smiling and understanding how our coaching will be, because you know I've spoken with so many coaches, I've worked with so many coaches, I obviously talk to a lot of women who have coaches, and I can count on one hand how many coaches actually take into consideration the client's cycle, and you know, like you said, you know that you prefer to do some steady state cardio. I very rarely see someone getting their plan or their training program, and that's been factored in. And I think that's probably what, again, it pushes women down to not talk about it, because they think, especially when you're working with a coach, they think that they have to push that to one side to sort of, you know, I hate the term, but that man up syndrome. Yeah. You know, I need to man up and just get on and do it to show that I'm worthy in the same way that a guy is. And I think once coaching changes, and hopefully we'll do that with Lose Weight Smiling, that you know that women are actually, you know, acknowledged and their cycles acknowledged, and actually having that factored in. I know so many women who would love to have the opportunity to work that way, because at the moment they don't. They just see each day and each week the same as the one before.
I think that hinders motivation as well, because it's like, you know, they might be thinking to themselves, I shouldn't feel this way, like I should feel tougher than this, you know, why am I feeling so weak, you know, and it's a physiological thing, it's just nature, and I think that women really do need to acknowledge it more and not get down on themselves and let that, you know, put them in a mental setback. So.
Yeah, and moving, you know, kind of moving forward towards that training protocol, you know, one of the things with this, the meeting that we wanted to talk about was, now, you know, you talk about the first part where, okay, regardless of how much you know yourself and you know your cycle, you know, just take it as a dare. You know, I dare you to spend the next 2 or 3 months just really recording your day-to-day and making note of it. But then the second part of that is, if you take it back and you take those those days and you realize, you see a pattern, you know that, all right, for the last 2 months I have felt bad on these days. Now you have the power to actually go ahead and start planning your workouts. Those who work out without a coach, you have the power to start planning your workouts with these things in mind. So moving forward now, if you know, going back to the days, 22 to 28 or 20 to 25, whatever they may be, let's say on these days you know that you have a lack of motivation, you're more likely to overeat. There's a few things that you can do there, and the lack of motivation, like Madeline said, I will plan something that I either know my client loves to do, or something that is just easy, steady state cardio. Just go to the gym, sit on a bike, read your favorite book, and pedal away. And it's one of those things that usually once you get there and you get moving, then I'll tell them, hey, if for some reason you decide you want to do the rest of your lifts, do what?
I love that. Sorry, I'm just like, yeah, I'm so there with that. I'm down with that.
Yeah, if you want to do the rest of your lifts, you can go ahead. And sometimes I've had a few other trainers kind of push back on me here, and they're like, well, what about athletes and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, if you're an athlete and you're a female, yes, you do it. Sometimes you're going to have to suck it up and you're going to have to work through. But most of the time, we're talking about gen pop here. We're talking about women who just want to feel better. They want to get into the gym. They want to make a difference. They understand that it can change their lives. And we don't need to, as trainers, as Madeline said, we just put people down and we make them feel like, all right, if you don't have that suck it up buttercup, which I absolutely hate that term, it gets thrown around a lot. But if you don't have this mentality, well, you're not worthy of being in the gym. I would love to, see men who make that comment, and I want to see them get laid out by. I'd love to see, like a cartoon, just some woman run by and just knock him out. But because these are stupid asinine comments. Not everyone's an athlete. Not everyone needs to train like them. So with that in mind, don't look at some of these fitness women you see on the internet and think, oh, she's tiny and she does this, therefore I should too. We don't know what that woman has going on in her life. We don't know what her genetic makeup is. All we know is she looks good in a bathing suit and she prances around and tells you what type of supplements to buy on the internet, and then you should feel bad about yourself. Get rid of all those people off your news feed. You do what's right for you. You train the way you need to train, and if that means going in for 5 days in a row into the gym and doing steady state cardio because you felt good afterwards and you still got in there, then do that. And that's the difference that'll really change a lot of women's training. Is I can go in and I will lift the way that's right for me. It's not what's right for everyone else. It's what's right for you. Because again, I've worked with women who the first 5 days of their cycle are absolutely miserable, and making it to the gym is questionable, let alone going in and doing heavy lifts. I've also worked with women who've gone in on these days and they just, all they want to do is put up the heaviest weight in the gym and just, go absolutely ham. I mean, they love it. So again, it's all about find your schedule, find your cycle, know it, and know it well enough for those who aren't working with trainers to be able to schedule appropriately. It's like I always say, why on earth would you schedule going to the gym when you know you're going on vacation? The same thing with, if your cycle is going to leave you unavailable, you're not going to make it to the gym the first 3 days of your cycle. Why would you do that to yourself and schedule time in the gym if you know you're not going to make it? And that's where knowing the cycle can help a lot, because psychologically it keeps you from feeling bad about, oh, I missed another workout. Well, if you scheduled and you knew you were going to miss that workout, be okay with it. Take it as an off day. Enjoy the rest and move on the rest of the month.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like you said, it's so psychological in that, if you've planned that and you've factored that in, and you stick to that, then you feel like you've achieved something, even though you may not have gone to that gym for those couple of days. The fact you've planned it in, and like we said back at the beginning, it's that element of control. You've got that back, rather than trying to stick to something that continuously feels wrong. Yeah, I think that's brilliant.
No, that's exactly, and again, I realize that speaking from a man's point of view, it's kind of like, well, what does he know about these things? But, Madeline's a great example, and that's why I love having her on the team, because she can kind of back me here immediately in the fact that, I worked with Madeline. I told her, just track it. As I was going through a lot of this, I would ask Madeline. I also had another girl I was training at the time who was an athlete. And I actually even purposely changed some of her workouts. As an athlete, this girl is now going to a D1 school, which over here is it's one of the best colleges you can get in for sports. So she's going to a D1 school on a full ride on softball, and I still purposefully changed her workouts during certain parts of her cycle, as well as some of the things we would talk about as how she would eat during certain times. But that all being said, you take that control back when you understand it. And it's not saying that you're weaker, it's just training more intelligently, making smarter choices, not setting yourself up for failure. And now moving into the next part is, there will be people with irregular cycles. They're harder to, really know what's coming on. But what I will say is if you track them, even in irregular cycles, you can tend to know that, all right, I'm more likely around these days to have my period, if that makes sense. Now, again, I am speaking still a little more vaguely. Not every cycle is the same, and irregular cycles can be what exactly they're called, irregular. So still, tracking them can give you some sense of what is to be expected. And I do know women who train with irregular cycles, and the same thing. I always get told, you don't understand, my cycle's irregular, tracking it won't matter at all. And then 3 or 4 months later, they come to me and they're like, hey, I actually did find some things were consistent, and therefore I can still train around them. As well as me as the trainer, I can tell there's some things that, now I can do to help them, and they can tell me, hey, it's probably going to start any day now. The beauty of being with a trainer, though, is also that, a well-qualified trainer knows how to change things up on the spot when they need to. that still fit into your goals. But that being said, if you're not with a trainer, at least you have some sense of, all right, it's probably coming any day now. And the more you understand your cycle, going back to the psychological side, you understand why you feel certain ways during the cycle. Perimenopause is one that I honestly, the more I study this one and I talk on it, I almost don't want to, just because unfortunately women are looking for this answer here of, okay, tell me exactly what to do, tell me exactly what to take so that I can, and the word I usually get is fix this. My biggest recommendation here is just to understand that during this time, it is made better by training, it's made better by eating and making, smarter food choices. Remember, as I said in the other thing, there's not such thing as bad foods, but there are smart food choices.
So what sort of age are we talking there?
Age, you can actually start, perimenopause can happen even in the mid to late 30s. Obviously, with anything, there's outliers. There's people who may start younger, but ultimately around the 40s is when you start realizing, you should start preparing, start paying attention. But again, when you're tracking your cycle, you'll start to notice if you see all of a sudden, for the last 5 years, I've been consistent on these days with a 3-day max change to my cycle, and all of a sudden now I'm going 5 to 7, maybe even 14 days later. That's a pure, a steadfast sign that now I need to get into see my doctor. Now, on menopause, I will not talk as long because the ultimate thing here is training will help. Osteoporosis is something to consider for females later on. So again, the training is going to help as you make it through. And then on to the other side, once you're postmenopausal and menses has stopped, periods have stopped, then now we've got an increased risk for osteoporosis, bone loss, which can lead to things like fractures, hip fractures. So we can protect the female body by weight training, weight-bearing loads, things of that nature. Vitamin D and calcium have been seen to be used. But going back to perimenopause, the reason I'm so adamant that we track and we know what's coming forward is the sooner you catch it and you realize by your doctor, not a trainer, by your doctor, that you are now perimenopausal, things like hormone treatments are much more beneficial and much safer, as I've read in science, the literature, and as well as talking to doctors about it. You're much better off being diagnosed sooner in perimenopause and then starting hormone treatments sooner rather than later. So, on menopause, the importance of tracking and training are twofold. You can notice it quicker, and when it does come on, certain parts of perimenopause can be made better. Also, during this time, I tell females to consider, hot flashes can happen while you're in the gym. So, take into account, things like layers, or also planning, you may be in the middle of the set, and if a hot flash comes on, you may just need to stop and walk around. All right, you may need to walk outside, and that's fine. Those things need to be. Don't let it surprise you, I guess is what I'm trying to say there. Don't let it sneak up on you, and now all of a sudden you're embarrassed, or you feel like you've kind of made your set not as well. Be prepared for those things as they can likely happen. So again, the more you know about it and the better prepared you are going in, the less likely it is going to be damaging to your workouts and to your overall state of mind during those workouts.
Wow. I'm glad I'm not at that stage yet.
Well, and it's ultimately, it's kind of the, it's that transition phase, and for some women it can happen very quick, and for other women it can be, it can last years. You can go years and years, 5-10 years even perimenopausal, and ultimately what's happening is the body is stopping producing eggs, so therefore the lining of the uterus will be more sporadic in why it's shedding. The uterus sheds to make way for a new egg later on, so that birth can take place, or not birth, I'm sorry, impregnation can take place. Hopefully birth isn't that fast. That would be awful. But yeah, you want to make sure that the body is ready, and so what happens is the eggs start more sporadically dropping. The female, obviously the body is going to respond based on that. So if there's no egg dropped yet, we don't need to start over, and so on and so forth. That's just something to kind of keep in mind. And I think the more you know, I believe this about everything. Anything you go through in life, the more you understand it and the more you know about it, the better prepared you are. But they're also, again, going back to the psychology of it, you're psychologically, you put yourself in a state of mind that this is what's going to happen or this is what could happen, therefore I'm ready for it, rather than being kind of blindsided by it. And that's the biggest piece of advice I can give in perimenopause is just know what to expect. Also, know that you can work with a registered dietitian and your doctor in order to lessen some of the more severe symptoms or effects that can come along with it. But back to the menstrual cycle itself, this goes back to, again, why I stress so much that you track the menstrual cycle, because it can help you in noticing, where you're at in perimenopause.
Yeah, I found with a lot of women that, that they took. Oh, where have you gone, Jonathan? I thought you were doing a forward roll then.
I don't do that sitting still.
Yeah, I found a lot of women. I think it's part fear and part frustration that where the women that do know their cycle well, they almost themselves out of training and exercise just because, not because there's a specific reason, not because they're in too much pain to train, but psychologically they took themselves out of it. So some women will come to me and they'll just say like, oh no, yeah, no, I'm not going to train this week because it's it's time of the month, but they can't actually give me a reason why. And I think a lot of them see their period as a period of weakness. For me personally, I definitely feel a lot stronger during my period, and I'm one of those women that I love to lift heavy stuff. I was going to swear then. I love to lift heavy stuff.
I think I did accidentally already one time.
Yeah. So what do you think about that? About because I think sometimes women like need the sort of the go sign, good to go sign with things like this. And when I sit down and talk with women and they say, oh yeah, I don't really like training at the time of the month, I say to them, well, actually, you know what? For me, I see that as a window of opportunity. I tend to not enjoy training during ovulation because I get the stomach cramps. So for me there, I would actually take that advice away that Madeline gave about doing steady state cardio, which would be fantastic for me. But during my period, I want to go and smash stuff up. Not because I'm angry, but because I feel strong. I feel like I want to do like I'm Sparta.
I had in the Girls Gone Strong article, when I finished it, I actually had a woman ask a very similar question, and my comment to that is, again, it goes back to knowing your cycle and training around your cycle. So if you feel strong and you, that's a great day. If you really do feel stronger on that day, then maybe that's a day you need to go for your personal best as well. If you're tracking and you're training and now you want to say, what's my max? I want to see how much I can do. Well, hey, that may be a great day to try to get your maxes in, as well as, if you maybe you train a little bit lighter the week before, knowing that on those days you're going to go in and train really, really, really hard. Because the last thing you want to do is get your training mixed up, because if that's something that you desire and it makes you feel better around that time, you don't want to mess up and overtrain the day before and then realize, well, now all of a sudden I want to go in and overtrain. It makes me feel better, but or where I say overtrain, I mean just training a little bit harder than you normally do. I shouldn't use the word overtrain there, but absolutely, if you feel stronger during that time, then you need to plan around it and make sure your workouts pretty much are complementing how you feel.
I'm sure other women do though. I'm sure I'm not alone on that. I think they just don't connect. I think they don't connect that. He's doing his forward rolls again.
I told you I can't stay still. I'm like, I have ADD.
But yeah, I think that if it was talked about more, and women realise that there is a possibility that you're going to be stronger on those days, and it is okay to train, because for some women who don't communicate with other people and keep the whole cycle thing very personal, there is a lot of preconceptions about how they should feel throughout. But what about women whose periods stop? Women that are going into training really heavy and come back to you and say that that perhaps that their regularity has changed or that their periods have stopped.
And that's actually a good question, because there's a lot of things that can go on there. Ultimately, this is more common in thinner women and athletes. You get to a point where it's your periods have now ceased, and that's generally a nutrition type of thing. So essentially, it's usually based around not consuming enough. Overtraining can actually lead to this, and like I said, I used that term in the wrong way on the last question. But continually overtraining and not feeding the body properly will lead to this. And what's happening is the body is now being told, and this is in general terms. Again, when this does start, I usually say you need to go in and see your doctor and make sure there's nothing else that's happening.
Yeah, sure.
But again, if you're overtraining, and this is where too it's important to think, diet is important, but just where overeating can be bad, undereating can be bad as well. There needs to be, you got to hit that sweet spot. I talk about that all the time, but yeah, I mean, if you're training too hard, you can pretty much tell the body, the female body is made in a way and has evolved over time in a way to where it's going to try to find the optimal way to reproduce, if you will. Now, again, hear me out. I am not saying women are made for reproductive purposes, but that is what the cycle is.
Yeah.
So you can be mad at me, but I did not create the cycle. If it were up to most men, we would do away with it as well. Okay. That being said, that is why what's happening now is the body's experiencing stress, and it's telling, and this is where I think the female is just absolutely fascinating, because now the body is telling itself, the mind is telling the body, look, we're going to stop producing certain hormones, we need to cease this time of the month, we need to make sure that the ovulation is now not occurring, because there is not enough food to support another life at this point, if that makes sense. So
God, we're cool, aren't we?
Do I know?
I said, God, we're cool, aren't we? That's
fascinating. But yeah, it really is cool though, because, and that's the human body, male and female. But ultimately, what's happening here is your body is stopping you from ovulating and stopping you from menses, because there's no need right now. Because if a child were to all of a sudden you're pregnant and there's this child in there, now you have to feed the child as well as yourself, or the fetus as well as yourself. So that being taken into consideration, most of the time, if you're training, you've been training really hard and you've been starving yourself. That's one of the quickest ways to realize that you are undereating or overtraining. You immediately need to seek, your doctor's kind of what they would have you do, their next steps for you. But if you're working with a trainer and they're putting you through this, I would also consider at that time changing up who I'm training with, or maybe you need to be more open with them about your eating habits and how hard you've been training. So again, that's the most typical case. I will say that women in gymnastics and competitive figure sports, fitness models, anything weight class, girls who are into jiu-jitsu, wrestling, girls who are into martial arts as a whole, they can tend to be at an increased risk here, because these are weight classes, and what they try to do is get themselves to a weight class, and sometimes they cut too far, and when they cut too far, they're not meeting their body's demands with nutrition, and now the body tells you, hey, we're going to stop this process for a while, we're going to stop the cycle, because you don't need to get pregnant right now.
Yeah.
Also, I need to say something here real quick. It is very dangerous. It is not something, some women hear this and they think, oh, wow, I get to stop having a period and I can't get pregnant? Awesome. No, absolutely not. This also can hinder you from getting pregnant long term, as well as osteoporosis. They call it the female athlete triad. There's psychological issues that begin happening, as well as the fact that the woman stops menses. Hormones can get out of whack, and you increase your chance, which you don't need any more of an increased chance for lower counts of bone mineral density, which is osteoporosis, and leads to brittle bones. They break easier, and as you age, this becomes worse and worse. So I just want to make sure I throw that out there, because some women are like, oh,
yeah,
wow, no more period, that sounds awesome. No, it's not something you want to have happen.
Yeah. Or I find they just ignore it, and think it will just go away. I take it as a sign that you really need to, address something. And some women I talk to, they think they can just sit it out and, wait for things to sort of auto-correct. But, that's a red flag to relook at your diet and your training and your lifestyle.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
It's always a red flag. It's never something that I always get a little frustrated, because in gymnastics over here, at least, sometimes it's almost like a badge of honor. Like, hey, I've stopped my cycle. I've stopped having a period. That means I'm training hard and I'm going beast mode. No,
Yeah.
you're damaging
Yeah.
your body.
Yeah. I don't like to see women, you know, sort of wearing it as a badge of honour that their periods have stopped. They've trained that hard and put their body under that much pressure. I know I wanted to ask you, and you might just have enough time to answer it very briefly, the issue with ligaments, lax ligaments, you know, at any point during the month when it might be more prominent, it might be more prone to injuries.
Yeah, Greg Knuckles actually just recently wrote a article covering a lot on the menstrual cycle, and I was fortunate enough to help him with a little bit. And one of the things he's talked about as well was the laxity of the joints. Ultimately, what that means is the joints have a little bit more give to them, if you will. They're able to stretch a little further, and because of estrogen receptors, you know, on the muscles and things of that nature, they can become a little bit looser when increased estrogen is around. There's also a belief in the luteal phase. I've read a little bit about the increased core temperature leading to more laxity in the joints. And as Madeline talked about the luteal phase and carrying fruits with you, one of the things that happens in the luteal phase is the body can heat up and actually burn more calories each day. This is kind of a blessing and a curse because it can lead to mood swings because you're not feeding it properly. This is why I tell women, I did want to touch on this too real quick. I tell women if you're experiencing these food cravings, you know, just eat a little more during this time. It's better to purposefully add 200 calories to your diet, 300 calories during that time than to all of a sudden find yourself in the cupboard binge eating 2,000 to 3,000 calories. But going back to the laxity, it's kind of one of those things. It's really hard to. This is where I think trainers are so important because it's really hard for you to notice it yourself, Lucy, and you and I had talked about this a little before, but ultimately it's kind of one of those things where, you know, you've got to be able to see it, and that's why, you know, we as coaches with Lose Weight Smiling, if we've got to work with you from a distance, it's why videoing the workout is important and why we want to see it. I will tend to, if I notice it, or if they, you know, if one of my clients says, hey, you know, I feel a little wobbly here. Proprioceptive training can help with that, which is essentially training that kind of, you know, helps you understand where your ligaments are in space. Ultimately, that's my go-to. And Lucy, I actually forgot to mention this to you earlier, but I think when we concentrate on the understanding of movement patterns and how to do them safely, we reduce that risk naturally anyways. And I hope that answers it. I don't want to go too much into it and add too much fear when there's not a need for it. So ultimately, knowing the movement patterns, you know, if you're doing simple, you know, I say simple, not simple, but multi-joint movements that most people do regularly, like the squat, things of that nature, you don't have to be as concerned anyways. The concern is normally when we get into, you know, things like people hopping up and down on boxes, which I'm not a big fan of anyways. Personally, just because, to be honest, if you ever want to hear me cuss and go full-on Hulk mode, watch me bang my shin on something. So I don't do that to other people. That's rude. That's mean. But and anyone who does CrossFit who's watching this is like, oh, he's a sissy. No, that is a public health concern when I get that. So I'm being a nice person at that point. But yeah, it's
okay, cool.
It's not that big of an issue if, you know, again, we're not talking about athletes here. So I think people who are, you know, they're working out regularly, just be mindful of what you're doing. You know, doing Bulgarian split squats by yourself with 500 pounds is probably not advisable at any time of the month. So
impressive.
What'd you say, Madeline?
But that is impressive.
It is. Please send us a video because I will post it on the internet. That's awesome.
What about in terms of supplements? You know, the one thing, not the one thing, but one of the things that really bugs me is obviously, again, it must be the same over in the US as it is here, that women are bombarded day in, day out with adverts for supplements to take for everything. And I think women are disillusioned with what to take when. I'm not anti-supplement, but I also like to see people take the minimum amount possible. So do you have like a go-to supplement for PMS and stuff?
There's and I forget, you asked me and I just went blank. Dr. Nadolsky actually...
Do a forward roll, it will help you.
It's got a really weird name, and it's actually on examine.com, and it's... actually, if you give me a second here, I'll just look it up while we're talking.
I know, I was just going to...
Which, by the way, the easiest answer to that is if you are wondering about a supplement in any way, shape, or form, the go-to for you should always be examine.com. If you want to be unlike me and avoid years of wasted money on supplements that don't work, or they're combined with fillers and then jacked up on price, examine.com is always the place to go.
Yeah.
What I love about it is you can be as in-depth or as brief as you want to be. So.
Because you said, Madeline said at the beginning about vitamin D, and obviously in my head I was just thinking about dosage-wise. You know, from what I've read, vitamin D is better taken in large, less frequent doses. So I wondered whether it'd be better at a particular time in the cycle to do that. Maybe that's something we could cover in Q&A after.
Yeah. I was gonna say we could definitely cover that. Ultimately, you know, there's vitamin D is very important, and I've seen differing numbers on how much to take. I usually try to get about 2,000 in a day, and to be honest, as busy as our lives are, I try to usually just take them both at the same time because, and I said they both. There's 2 pills. So for me personally, I'm not going to try to balance out, you know, if I've got time to take vitamin D, I'm going to take it right then. If I don't take it in the morning, I'm going to forget and it won't happen.
Yeah. So, see, I take mine weekly. I do mine in one load weekly.
Yeah, I would have to look back into that. And again, I just like it because I take it, you know, in the morning. It's part of my morning routine, so it works. If I took it weekly, I'd forget too. Here's it's Vitex Agnus Castus is a common for PMS, and it kind of has mixed reviews, but it's been shown to be beneficial. So I think it's one of those things where, you know, if you want to take it, you're experiencing, you know, part of the negative effects of PMS with premenstrual syndrome, and you know, some women are actually diagnosed with this. I will say that, from what I understand, birth controls have been shown to do a better job. But if you're going that natural route, you don't want birth controls. You don't want to mess with that, you know, at this time. But I will say, if your doctor advises you to do it, it's kind of like that Jimmy Fallon skit with the vaccines, where he's pretty much telling you, you know, if your doctor tells you it's good for you, you know, you probably need to do it. They didn't go to school for all those years and continued education for nothing. So it's, you know, it's one of those things where it's ultimately our call at the end of the day. It's ultimately your call at the end of the day. But again, I very seldom have found myself, with the exception of Dr. Oz, I've found myself not really ever questioning the comments made by someone's doctor.
Dr. Phil.
Dr. Oz gives me hard advice, though, on, you know, some type of surgery on the heart. I may listen then.
Yeah. So. Brilliant. You know, it makes me wonder as well, after this conversation, you know, thinking about it, you know, I don't think it's a case that, I don't actually think, you know, that women generally get too stroppy about, you know, men having an opinion on our cycles. I think that men just need to get more clued up. You know, and now I'm thinking to myself, we've done this webinar, you know, more for women, but, you know, I think we could do a follow-up one, you know, a version for guys, because, you know, there's so many guys out there that would benefit from learning more about it, and, you know, what aisle to go to in the supermarket.
Well, what's funny is, and I wrote about this one a long time ago, but I actually was saying, you know, if guys would be, we always talk about how complicated women are, and they're hard to understand, and I kind of made it was a joke, but it was a joke with a lot of truth behind it, and I said, you know, if it's not so much that they're complicated, it's more so that we don't want to take the time to understand them, and if we took the time to understand, you're actually kind of, like, you're pretty easy to read, in the sense of, if you actually know what the cycle is and what it consists of, and how you're, you know, if you're in a relationship with this woman, whether it's wife, girlfriend, friend, whatever else, you can really almost predict how they're going to be at certain times. So they're actually, in my opinion, far more predictable than men who are full of testosterone, and you never know what we're going to do if we hit our shins. So
yeah. Well, maybe people should, maybe women should opt for a shared diary.
yeah, exactly. It's kind of like those workbooks. I don't know if y'all have them when we got married, we had to do this workbook, and I hated it. I thought it was the dumbest thing ever. And then all of a sudden I realized, like, oh, wow, this thing may have been good in some ways, because my wife and I had to do it together, and it was this shared experience. So
Yeah.
Maybe we should come up with a menstrual cycle workbook.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. I'm just conscious of time. I know we're coming up to the end of the hour.
Yep.
So I don't know, Madeline, if you've got anything you wanted to add. If you want to do a forward roll or backwards roll or...
Yeah, not today. Maybe next week. I was just thinking that might be a good Q&A for me, like in the fitness myths kind of thing. Like we could do like a menstrual myth for the guys, something like that.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. Yeah, because I think there there is a mixture of guys that like when you said a couple of times, Jonathan, you don't want women to sort of get annoyed with you, and I think a lot of men feel like that. They think, oh God, I don't have any right to be involved in this conversation, and then you've got the other half of the guys who just are too afraid to get involved, but. And then also another facet from that is the coaches, and actually I don't even think it's just guy coaches. I've seen a lot of coaching work from women who also just ignore this whole menstrual cycle. So
some women are going to experience it differently, and there are women out there who. And even still, like I said, even the ones who have told me they experience nothing, they still start to notice small changes like irritability that's just kind of minor, or even, hunger. One of the most common ones that I get told is, wow, I didn't realize that I'm actually more hungry and I actually eat more around this time of the month. But, yeah, you end up with a coach who's female, and she had no problem training hard and lifting heavy and, just sucking it up and getting through it, and then she assumes, and that in my opinion is kind of a poor coach, is to assume that your
clients,
your clients or your mentors or those who are on your team, to assume that they're going to experience everything in life the same as you, in my opinion, makes you a poor leader.
And I think, and also, just accepting the individuality on it and trying to not go, if you do enter into a conversation or discussions with other people about cycles, and your cycle in particular, I've noticed from participating in conversations that everyone's so different. And for me personally, I've noticed that the most shit happens during when I'm ovulating. That's when I'm moody and tearful, slightly aggressive, slightly more hungry, and yet when I get to my time of the month, sorry, that's my dogs barking, my guard dogs. When I get to the time of the month, actually that's when I find things calm down for me. But yet when you talk to other women and they're sitting there saying, oh God, when it gets to the time of the month, I'm like this and I'm like that, and I'm thinking, oh Jesus, it's not like that for me. And I'm sure for other women it means that they end up sort of, not acknowledging their personal circumstances. So I think it's really important to take away from this is, one, to start keeping a diary, and two, to not feel like you have to sort of fit this generic cycle, because I don't think there is one. Apart from, your averages, but, in terms of psychologically and hunger and, sleep, I also, I sweat more at night when I'm ovulating as well. I think it's really important to take that way, to remain individual. And, if something happens to you quite a little bit different to the average woman, it does still count, so yeah, sorry, I'm done.
Yeah, it's all about, and that's the most important part of it when I, and you may have heard Lucy, the talk that I did with Lift the Bar, but, I can give you all of these averages, and now the important thing as a coach, and for those listening to this now, the important thing for you to do for yourself is to take those, but realize these are typical things that may happen, but at the same time, I'm giving you ways to handle them. But if they don't happen, say that I told you something's typical during the follicular phase, but for you it happens during ovulation, well, you still apply the same principles. If you feel like you're not sleeping as well, you're more stressed, you're more irritable, you're more hungry, well, then make the appropriate changes that were mentioned in the other part of the phases. And that's where, again, the tracking is so important, because now you know how to handle it, and you kind of have the ability to say, all right, this is what's now about to come my way.
Yeah, cool. Brilliant. Great, guys. I think we're done.
Well, we made it right to an hour. I mean, well, we're like...
It's because you've got two women in charge, you see. We're on it.
Control freaks, right?
I'm off to go and draw little icons, little mini me's. I could do a little mini me with a hammer, little mini me with a cake.
I just do what I'm told around here.
Yeah. Especially at a certain time of the month.
Yeah. It's really funny though because there really should be a male version of this. There needs to be a workshop for men and how to understand what you're.
Yeah.
It should be something understanding the female in your life.
Yeah, I think we should definitely book that one in. That would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
Avoid becoming another one of those statistics.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, don't. Right, done. Cool.
I'm ending the webinar. Good night, good evening,
Good night.
good morning, good Friday for Nicola.